Hello friend, welcome back. Today we'll start with the new topic that is thin layer chromatography. Again it is in the two part. Part 1 we will start now. The learning outcome. The learner will be able to explain the principle of thin layer chromatography, discuss the method and steps of thin layer chromatography, and describe advantages, disadvantages, and application of thin layer chromatography. We have studied the chromatography in the previous chapters. Chromatography is a physical method of separation involving differential distribution between the two phases, in which one phase is percolated through the another. So TLC is one of the simplest, fast, easiest, and inexpensive of the several chromatographic techniques used in qualitative and quantitative analysis to separate organic compounds and to test the purity of the compounds. TLC is a form of liquid chromatography consisting of a mobile phase that is called as a developing solvent and a stationary phase, generally a plate or strip coated with the film form of a silica gel. If you define the chromatography, it will be defined as thin layer chromatography, a method of separations or identification of mixture of component into individual component by using finely divided absorbent solid or liquid spread over a glass plate and liquid as a mobile phase. If you see the history of chromatography and specifically this thin layer chromatography, all of we know that the Michael Twist is created and as a beginning, or it is called as a father of liquid chromatography. Twist developed his idea in early 19th century. In 1931, uh, Ismoilila and Schreiber described basic principle and used it for separation of plant extract. In 1945 or 44, consider consent, consents Gordon and Martin started using filter paper for separation of amino acid. In 1950, Creature, who used impregnated glass plate coated with the alumina and identified terpenes. In 1958, Egon Stahl, we have this book also, Egon Stahl, introduced a standard equipment for preparing uniform thin layer chromatography of the uniform thickness. When to use the TLC? All of you know the various chromatography, paper chromatography you have studied. Now, here, when to use the TLC? The substances are non-volatile or of low volatility. We can go for the thin layer chromatography. The substances are strongly polar, mediumly polar, non-polar, or ionic. Any type of the substance can be separated with thin layer chromatography. When large number of samples must be analyzed simultaneously, so it is a cost effective and within a limited period of time we can complete the analysis by using this thin layer chromatography, because at a time we can spot all the samples together and run the chromatogram, and within a small period simultaneously we will get all determinations. The sample to be analyzed would damage or destroy the columns of liquid chromatography (NGC). Many plant extracts or many organic components, they are harmful to the packings which are used in the liquid chromatography. So they may attack the adsorbent which is there in liquid chromatography, or they may damage or destroy the columns. Therefore, thin layer chromatography is choice of technique for separating such components. Where to use the TLC? In pharmaceuticals and drugs, identification of the impurities, purity testings and determination of concentration of active ingredients, auxiliary substances and preservatives in drug and drug preparation, process control in synthetic manufacturing processes. All your official books listed the TLC as one of the identification technique in their raw materials. In clinical chemistry, forensic chemistry, and biochemistry, we are using thin layer chromatography for various separations. In cosmetology, also, various pigments can be separated by using thin layer chromatography. In food analysis, we are using the thin layer chromatography, and in environmental analysis to separate out the pollutants, we are using this thin layer chromatography. If you see the principle of thin layer chromatography, the principle is based on absorption chromatography or partition chromatography. So paper is only the partition chromatography, whereas thin layer chromatography can be used as a partition as well as adsorption chromatography. Depending upon absorbent, its treatments, and nature of solvent employed, chromatography, thin layer chromatography can be used. So the main principle is again hydrogen bonding is the main intermolecular forces involved in TLC separation. Separation of compounds occur due to difference in partitioning or adsorption behavior between liquid and stationary phase. As per our definition, again I will say it is a differential distribution. So this differential distribution might be partitioning or it might be adsorption. So if it is only the layer is used for the process of separation, it is called as the adsorption chromatography. If this layer holds the liquid on the surface and this liquid is used for the purpose, it is called as a partition chromatography because the substance will get partitioned between the stationary phase and the mobile phase. Or if the substance get adsorbed, differentially adsorbed, or the adsorbent which is there on the plate, it is called as the adsorption chromatography. The component with more affinity towards stationary phase travels slower, which will remain adhere with the stationary phase, and component with less affinity towards stationary phase travel faster. So the component should spend sufficient time with stationary phase for the process of separation. So what is the working of TLC? In TLC, the absorbent is coated on a solid support, that is a thin sheet of glass, plastic or aluminum is used as a thin layer. The adsorbent is applied in a layer of 0.25 mm thickness. In many cases, a small amount of binder, such as plaster of Paris, is mixed with adsorbent to facilitate the coating. Plaster of Paris means gypsum. Okay, so therefore we are calling it as a silica gel G, and this capital G stands for gypsum, which is used as a binder, which will hold the layer on the surface properly, so it will not peel out when you are using the TLC plate. The mixture to be separated is dissolved in the solvent, and the resultant solution is spotted onto the thin layer plate near the bottom. Means again here also we are marking a baseline 1 centimeter or 2 centimeter apart from one edge of the plate, and we are spotting the sample on this baseline. A solvent or mixture of solvent called as a eluent is allowed to flow up the plate by capillary action. Again, similar to that, ascending paper chromatography, we are dipping the coated plate with the sample in chamber which is saturated with the environment, and we are allowing to flow the mobile phase opposite to the gravity towards the finishing line. The separation of mixture in microgram quantities by movement of a solvent across the flat surface. Component migrates at different rate due to the difference in solubility, adsorption, size or charge. Erosion is continued till the solvent front reaches the opposite side of the surface and components are examined. Okay, so let the component move on this plate, and according to differential distribution, they will acquire a different distance that we are finding as RF value. So that RF value is the distance traveled by the solute divided by the distance traveled by the solvent front. Again, it will be always less than 1. So we are calculating this RF value as a physical characteristic, and we are comparing with the observed value with the reference value. Again, same thing will be here. We cannot take the book value RF values for comparison purpose. Simultaneously, we have to spot the sample and the standard on the same plate in the same environment so that you will get the exact identification of the species. What are the advantages of thin layer chromatography? The basic advantage of thin layer chromatography against your paper chromatography that corrosive spraying reagents can be used without damaging the plates because paper chromatography, it is composed of the cellulose, and this cellulose may get damaged with the sulfuric acid visualizing agents. Okay, so for many identification, we needs to use such corrosive agents, and that is only possible if you are using the thin layer chromatography. It is a simple method and low cost as compared to your HPLC and other instrumental technique. It is a very low cost technique. Very simple equipments are required for the separations. Any type of component can be separated even it is in the microgram level. Since it is a very sensitive technique, in column chromatography, we require the more quantity of samples to be separated. Where here we can even use very small quantity of sample. It is a very sensitive technique. Less quantity of mobile phase and stationary phase are required as compared with the column chromatography. In column chromatography, a sufficient quantity of stationary phase is to be added in the column. More mobile phase need to be flow through the column so that the separation will achieve. Where here we require a very small quantity, that is a very thin layer of the stationary phase on the plate, and very small quantity of your mobile phase is also required, so it is a cost effective technique. Detection is very easy and fast. We are using either physical method of visualization or chemical visualization. So we can spray with the certain visualizing agent, so we can get the result very immediate. It is not a time consuming as column chromatography, where blindly we are collecting the fractions of 10 ml and we are analyzing every 10 ml fractions for their content. It is a very simple method. Very less equipments are used for the separation purpose. It is also a sensitive method as compared, because we know that very small samples are used. It is called as a sensitive method. The component present in the sample can be separated and recovered out easily by scratching the powder coating on the plate. That is called as a preparative thin layer chromatography. We can go for the actual separation of species in the laboratory for the further process. Okay, it is not only the analytical tool, but it is a separation tool. We can use paper chromatography is only the analytical tool. We cannot separate out the components on the paper, but here we can have a thick layer and we can separate out the species by scratching out the zones and extracting it for the particular components. But it has also some disadvantages. So what will be the disadvantages of chromatography? The result obtained from experiments are difficult to reproduce. Many times the layer thickness is affecting, the particle size is affecting, the mobile phase composition is affecting. So the result obtained from the experiments are difficult to reproduce. Operations require skill development. You should have a uniform thickness over the plate. Then you should scratch out the three edges of the plate. There should not be adherence of silica gel on backside of your plate also. Then drying of plate require the skills. Then again, spotting is also requires skill, so that when we are operating the plate should not get peeled out. So that requires the skill. It is applicable for soluble mixture components only, like dissolves, like only those substances which are soluble can be separated by using the thin layer chromatography. All chromatography is having these limitations, that it is only for the soluble substances. Qualitative analysis, it is used only for the qualitative analysis, not for the quantitative analysis. A modified TLC, that is called as a HPTLC, is used nowadays for the quantitative analysis, but the old technique, that is simple TLC, is only a qualitative tool. It cannot be used for the quantitative analysis. It is not an automatic process. All coating and everything is done manually, so many chances of variation might be there. And the humidity and temperature can affect the result, as thin layer chromatography works in open system. In column chromatography, it is a closed system. Here, it is a surface separation. It is not the depth separation. So there may be the effect of humidity and temperature. So proper saturation is only the way to get the exact RF values every time. The separation process take place only to a certain length as a plate length is limited. Okay, so many substances required more RF value to get it separated out. And in that case, we are not able to use this thin layer chromatography because we have the limitations of plate and the flow of liquid opposite to the gravitational force. Now, in next lecture, we are going to study this technique, or that is called as operation involved. So that is choice of adsorbent use, preparation of plate, preparation and application of sample, choice of solvent, development of chromatogram, drying of chromatogram, then visualization or location of spot, RF value estimation. Okay, so see you in the next lecture. Thank you and happy learning, friends.